handbag. Ancient Sumerians were more than familiar with handbags, or perhaps objects that modern people perceive as such.
Across the crumbling temples of Mesopotamia, the jungles of ancient Mesoamerica, and the wind-carved stones of Göbekli Tepe, one haunting image keeps reappearing: a small, handbag-shaped object held by gods, kings, and winged beings. Separated by oceans and thousands of years, these civilizations all carve the same mysterious symbol. But why? Archaeologists call them bandudu, ritual buckets. Others see them as emblems of divine wisdom. But some believe they hide a deeper secret, a key to forgotten knowledge, or even traces of a lost civilization that once spanned the globe. From Assyrian palaces to Olmec altars and the world's oldest temple in Turkey, these handbags of the gods appear wherever myths speak of creation, power, and contact with the divine. What were these ancient people trying to show us? Were they performing simple purification rites, or depicting something far beyond human understanding? Tonight, we follow the trail of these stone-carved mysteries through deserts, jungles, and time itself to uncover what might lie inside the handbags of the gods. If you love uncovering ancient secrets and forgotten histories, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you don't miss what we reveal next, because what's coming will change how you see the ancient world forever. Across the ancient world, from the temple walls of Assyria to the jungles of Mesoamerica, a single curious image appears again and again: a small, handbag-shaped object held in the hands of divine or semi-divine figures. To modern eyes, it looks ordinary, almost familiar, yet its repetition across civilizations separated by oceans and thousands of years has turned it into one of archaeology's most haunting mysteries. The story begins in the mid-19th century when British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard began excavating the ruins of Nimrud in what is now northern Iraq. As he brushed away centuries of sand, Layard uncovered vast stone reliefs depicting winged beings, part human, part eagle, known from later translations as the Apkallu, or sages. Each held two objects: a pinecone-like implement in one hand and a small, rounded container with a curved handle in the other. Layard had no name for it, but later scholars would call it the bandudu, a ritual bucket. Similar scenes soon emerged from the nearby Assyrian capitals of Nineveh and Khorsabad, excavated by Paul-Émile Botta and Hormuz Rassam. Everywhere these carvings appeared, the mysterious bucket accompanied the winged figures. They stood beside kings or sacred trees, engaged in acts that seemed ceremonial, sprinkling water or performing blessings. The consistent presence of this handbag suggested it held powerful symbolic meaning, perhaps linked to purification or divine protection. For decades, scholars assumed the motif was unique to Mesopotamia. Then, discoveries halfway across the world began to complicate the story. In the 1940s, archaeologist Matthew Sterling, working among the colossal stone monuments of La Venta in southern Mexico, unearthed Monument 19, a relief depicting a supernatural figure emerging from a serpent's coils. In its hand, a small rectangular object with a curved top, astonishingly similar in form to the Mesopotamian bandudu. The Olmec civilization that carved it flourished around 900 to 400 BCE, long after Mesopotamia's golden age, yet the resemblance was undeniable. Even earlier, in the hills of southeastern Turkey, excavations at Göbekli Tepe revealed carvings nearly 12,000 years old, the oldest known monumental art on Earth. There, on limestone pillars shaped like massive T's, the same handbag-like forms appear once more, hovering above animals and abstract symbols. The people who carved them lived millennia before the invention of writing or metal tools, yet they too repeated this timeless image. What connects these distant cultures, the builders of Göbekli Tepe, the priests of Mesopotamia, the rulers of the Olmec world, is not direct contact, but a shared visual idea that the gods, or those who served them, carried something precious and sealed. No physical example of these bags has ever been found. They exist only in stone, replicated with care across continents and ages. Archaeologists, historians, and artists continue to debate their purpose. Were they ritual vessels for sacred water, symbols of divine wisdom, or metaphors for something unseen, the burden of knowledge, the spark of life, the mystery of creation itself? Whatever the answer, these enigmatic carvings remind us that the earliest civilizations spoke a common language of symbols, one that still stirs wonder today. Each time the image appears, on the palace walls of Nimrud, the serpent stones of La Venta, or the weathered pillars of Göbekli Tepe, it whispers the same quiet question: what did the ancients believe was worth carrying between heaven and earth? The story of the so-called handbags of the gods begins not with myth, but wit, to the dust of forgotten cities. When archaeologists first entered the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, they uncovered a world that seemed to stand halfway between humanity and the divine. Among its most striking images were the apkallu, winged guardians carved into palace walls, their every motion frozen in relief. Each figure held two distinct objects, a pine cone-like form in one hand, and in the other, a small curved vessel that would come to be known as the bandudu. The earliest known depictions date from around 2500 to 700 BCE, spanning the empires of Sumer, Assyria, and Babylonia. It was Austin Henry Layard, in the 1840s, who first brought these scenes to light at Nimrud, uncovering vast stone slabs adorned with intricate, almost lifelike carvings. Later, Paul Émile Botta's work at Khorsabad and Hormuzd Rassam's discoveries at Nineveh expanded the picture. Across sites separated by hundreds of miles, the same image appeared again and again, beings from the heavens performing what seemed to be acts of blessing or purification. Scholars studying these reliefs noticed a consistent ritual gesture. The pine cone, called the mulilu, was often dipped into the bucket, the bandudu, and then raised toward the king or the sacred tree of life. This act, interpreted as a symbolic purification or anointing, suggested that the bag contained sacred water, the essence of renewal and divine favor. In ancient cuneiform texts, the apkallu were said to purify the land and bring knowledge from the gods. The ritual they performed, immortalized in stone, reflected the belief that order and life itself depended on this divine substance. Yet, despite countless excavations, no physical examples of the bandudu have ever been recovered. Not a single bucket, vessel, or artifact matches the object so precisely rendered in relief. It exists only in images, repeated across centuries, its form preserved though its purpose remains uncertain. Then came the discoveries that would widen the mystery far beyond Mesopotamia. In the mid-20th century, Matthew Stirling's excavation at La Venta in southern Mexico revealed Monument 19, a colossal Olmec carving depicting a mythic figure emerging from a serpent. In its hand, the same unmistakable shape appeared, a small, square-bottomed object with a rounded top, echoing the Mesopotamian bandadu in uncanny detail. The resemblance raised uncomfortable questions. The Olmec civilization flourished nearly 2,000 years after Mesopotamia's decline on a continent supposedly isolated from the Old World. How could two cultures, separated by vast oceans, depict the same image with such precision? Was this mere coincidence, a universal symbol arising from shared human imagination, or something deeper, an echo of a forgotten story passed down through time? Adding yet another layer, excavations at Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey revealed that the symbol was even older than Mesopotamia itself. Carved into limestone pillars dating back 12,000 years, long before water was not simply a natural element, but the essence of life itself, drawn from the cosmic ocean that separated gods from mortals. The Apkallu's ritual act symbolized cleansing and renewal, ensuring the world remained in harmony with divine order. Agriculture or writing, the same handbag-like shapes appear hovering above animals and geometric designs. The people of Göbekli Tepe left no texts to explain them, but the image speaks of continuity, a symbol carried across millennia, its meaning transformed but never lost. From Mesopotamia's temples to Mesoamerica's jungles, this mysterious motif persisted, untouched by geography or time. Whether a vessel for holy water, a container of life, or a metaphor for divine knowledge, it connected civilizations that never met, as if each remembered, in their own way, that the gods once carried something precious in their hands. Its story remains one of archaeology's most captivating puzzles, a quiet reminder that the world's first symbols may have spoken a language older than history itself. When archaeologists first began comparing the handbags carved in stone across different civilizations, they noticed something striking. While the object's shape remained nearly identical, a compact, rounded vessel with a flat base and curved handle. Its meaning seemed to shift, reflecting the beliefs and rituals of each culture that depicted it. Yet, beneath these differences, a common theme emerged, one that spoke of purification, balance, and the transfer of divine knowledge from heaven to earth. In Mesopotamia, the motif was part of a sacred performance. Reliefs from Nimrud and Nineveh show the winged Apkallu, divine sages, using the pine cone-like mullaloo to sprinkle holy water from the bandudu over kings and temples. To these ancient peoples, water was not simply a natural element, but the essence of life itself, drawn from the cosmic ocean that separated gods from mortals. The Apkallu's ritual act symbolized cleansing and renewal, ensuring the world remained in harmony with divine order. Archaeologists interpret the bag as a vessel of sacred water, but also as a symbol of the god's ability to maintain purity, both physical and spiritual, in the human realm. In Mesoamerica, thousands of miles and centuries apart, the motif carried a similar, yet transformed significance. Among the Olmec, the earliest known civilization of the Americas, Monument 19 at La Venta depicts a supernatural being holding the same mysterious object. Scholars note that this figure is linked to serpents, rain, and fertility, forces tied to creation and transformation. Here, the handbag may represent a container of life-giving essence, perhaps the rain itself, which sustains crops and civilizations. Later Mesoamerican cultures, such as the Maya and Zapotec, inherited similar symbols, rulers holding pouches or vessels in scenes of cosmic rebirth, linking divine authority to the power of creation. To them, it was not merely an object, it was the embodiment of the god's promise to sustain life. At Göbekli Tepe, however, the symbol takes on a more abstract, celestial tone, carved on the world's oldest known monumental pillars, dating back over 12,000 years. The motif appears hovering above animals in patterns that some researchers interpret as star constellations. The builders of Göbekli Tepe left no written language, but their art seems to speak in symbols of cycles, order, and the eternal relationship between sky and earth. To some archaeologists, the bags may represent the dome of the heavens, containing the stars, or the balance of cosmic forces that ancient people sought to honor through ritual. Whatever its exact meaning, it is clear the symbol held great significance, even in humanity's earliest sacred architecture. Across all these cultures, one haunting detail remains constant. The handbag is always closed, never open, never revealing what lies within. It is carried, guarded, and displayed with reverence, as though its contents were too sacred, too dangerous, or too profound for mortal eyes. In art, this restraint is meaningful. What is sealed becomes a metaphor for mystery, for wisdom, for the unseen truths that the ancients believed only the gods could possess. Archaeologists, theologians, and historians have long debated whether these similarities are mere coincidence or evidence of shared human intuition, a collective way of expressing the divine. Perhaps the ancients, separated by distance but united in imagination, were telling the same story, that true power lies not in what can be seen, but in what must remain hidden. The question that lingers is not what was inside these sacred vessels, but why so many believed something invisible, something eternal, was worth guarding across ages and continents. Maybe what the ancients carried was not an object at all, but knowledge, the timeless understanding that creation, order, and life itself were gifts to be held with care. Every great mystery in archaeology eventually becomes a meeting ground between science and imagination, and the so-called handbags of the gods are no exception. For more than a century, these curious stone carvings have drawn both scholarly inquiry and public fascination, a dialogue between those who seek explanations grounded in ritual and history and those who see in them traces of something far older, even otherworldly. Mainstream archaeology approaches the motif with care, guided by decades of study into ancient symbolism. Researchers such as Thorkild Jacobsen, Irene Winter, and Zainab Bahrani have described the Mesopotamian bandudu not as an object of mystery, but as a vessel of meaning. Their studies connect it directly to purification ceremonies depicted in palace reliefs, where winged figures use the pine cone-like mullilu to sprinkle sacred water drawn from the bucket. This act, they argue, was more than ritual. It was a visual expression of cosmic balance, the maintenance of order between the divine and mortal realms. The bag, in this sense, carried not a physical secret, but a symbolic one, the purity of kingship, the renewal of life, and the divine right to rule. Art historians have further noted that the form of the bandudu resembles containers used in everyday life, small pails or baskets for carrying seeds, oils, or water. Over time, the object may have been elevated from a tool of daily use to a sacred emblem representing the god's power to nurture and sustain. In this view, the motif is a bridge between the ordinary and the divine, a reminder that even the most common object can embody the sacred when placed in the hands of the gods. But outside the boundaries of academic interpretation, a different set of voices has kept the mystery alive. Writers like Graham Hancock and Eric von Däniken have proposed that the motif points to a shared memory of an advanced, forgotten civilization, a culture of teachers who traveled the ancient world, imparting knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, and architecture. To them, the handbags represent containers of wisdom, literal or symbolic vessels of technology or energy carried by beings remembered as gods. This theory, while speculative, resonates deeply with those who sense that ancient cultures may have been more interconnected and more advanced than we often assume. Psychologists have added another layer still. Through a Jungian lens, the handbag becomes an archetype, the vessel that holds potential, the womb of creation, the symbol of the unconscious mind that contains the mysteries of existence. In myth and art across time, closed containers, from Pandora's jar to the Ark of the Covenant, represent the boundary between the known and the unknowable. The bandudu might therefore speak to something universal, humanity's enduring need to give form to the idea of containment, to express the unseen in a tangible shape. In recent years, this once obscure image has found new life in popular culture. From online discussions and YouTube documentaries to museum exhibits and even memes, the handbags of the gods have become icons of curiosity. Shows like Ancient Aliens have turned them into modern symbols of lost knowledge, fueling endless debate about what they might mean. Some dismiss the attention as pseudoscience. Others see it as proof of how powerfully the image still speaks to the collective imagination. Despite countless studies and theories, no archaeologist has ever found a physical artifact resembling the object depicted in ancient carvings. The handbags remain bound to stone, their forms precise but their purpose elusive. Every new discovery, whether a relief uncovered in Assyria or a pillar unearthed at Göbekli Tepe, adds to the archive of evidence, but not to the explanation. Perhaps that is why the motif endures. Whether viewed through the lens of scholarship, speculation, or psychology, the handbags of the gods remind us that mystery itself is part of what defines humanity, our endless search to understand what the ancients once thought too sacred to reveal. Across thousands of years and countless carvings, one question has lingered. What did the gods carry in their hands? The small, curved handbags etched into ancient stone have inspired wonder, debate, and imagination. Yet after more than a century of excavation, study, and reflection, archaeologists and historians have come to believe that what lay within these sacred vessels was never meant to be seen or touched. The contents, it seems, were not physical at all. Through the lens of archaeology, the Bandudu of Mesopotamia is now understood less as a container of material things and more as a vessel of meaning. The ancient artists who carved it into the walls of Nimrud and Nineveh weren't depicting a tool, they were expressing a relationship. The Apkallu who held the bag were mediators between gods and humans, guardians of wisdom and balance. The act of sprinkling holy water from the Bandudu was a ritual reminder that purity, order, and life itself required constant renewal. Inside the symbolic bucket, one might say, was the essence of creation, the sacred duty to keep chaos at bay. At Göbekli Tepe, that idea takes on an even more timeless form. Here, in the world's oldest temple complex, long before writing or kingship, the same motif appears. Whatever these early builders believed, their art suggests a deep awareness of cycles, of life, death, and the stars above. The handbags carved on the stone pillars might have held the cosmos itself, a reflection of humanity's earliest attempt to capture the order of the heavens in the language of stone. They speak to an intuition that the world must be held together carefully by invisible hands. In Mesoamerica, the pattern repeats. Among the Olmec, the sacred bag may have represented the power of creation, the authority to bring rain, fertility, and life to the land. The gods and rulers who carried it were not only figures of worship, but stewards of natural balance. Across continents, these images echo the same truth, that what the ancients valued most was not possession, but harmony, the delicate connection between the human and the divine. To archaeologists, historians, and anthropologists, this revelation is perhaps the most human one of all. The handbags of the gods were never about hidden technology or forgotten treasures. They were about something far older and far deeper, the recognition that knowledge, like life, must be carried and protected. Each civilization reimagined this truth in its own way. Mesopotamians in their sacred rituals, the Olmec in their mythic sculptures, and the builders of Göbekli Tepe in their celestial symbols. The handbag, then, becomes a mirror. It reflects the universal desire to preserve what is sacred, wisdom, balance, and the fragile continuity of existence. To hold such a vessel was to hold responsibility, to carry the memory of creation itself. Its mystery endures because it touches something within us, the awareness that some truths cannot be opened or fully known, only safeguarded and passed on. So perhaps the real secret of the handbags of the gods is not what they contained, but what they continue to inspire. They remind us that every generation, ancient or modern, seeks to understand its place in the universe, to grasp, even briefly, the invisible threads that connect heaven and earth. Perhaps what they carried wasn't a relic at all, but the story of humanity's first search for meaning. If this journey fascinated you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the past still holds secrets waiting to be unearthed.